Racism and Discrimination, Lessons I've Learned in Field Experience during Practicum, Internship 1 and Internship 2 Regarding Multicultural Competence by Courtney Balvin. The first question posed is, how have your field experiences and courses facilitated self-awareness and self-reflectiveness about racism and discrimination as they relate to mental health counseling? I believe that my field experiences and courses have deeply impacted my understanding of racism and discrimination regarding mental health counseling, particularly my field experiences. I feel that my encounters with various clients have deeply and significantly impacted me, and I look forward to sharing a little bit about them. Throughout my time at the same site for 3 field experiences, I've seen 20 plus individual clients. Only 8 of them have been minority clients, while I've seen a number of various cultures. This 8 minority client statistic is very low, as 84%, according to Johnson and Williams, of therapy pairings are cross-racial and cross-cultural. So the cross-component is certainly something that I experienced, but as far as cross-racial, I certainly did not experience the 84%. But as I began in the early stages of my practicum, creating treatment plans and discussing case conceptualizations, I realized that I had to ask myself questions beyond the basic treatment planners or the basic recommended treatments for different disorders, different diagnoses. And the questions I had to ask are, what was unique, what was different about this client, whether race, whether culture, whether experiences, what made them different than the textbook answers or the textbook examples that might be given in a treatment planner. And as I began to press into that, I had to realize that I was making a lot of assumptions. What assumptions am I making about this client? What assumptions have I not dived into? What have I not challenged with them? Have I not considered whether or not they were internally rooted as opposed to externally rooted with evidence? And to kind of sum up the yes, I had to begin to ask myself, what do I think I know about this client that I have not asked? And this forced me to begin to challenge biases. It forced me to begin to consider what things may lie within myself that I was imposing on the client or assuming about the client that simply were not validated and were not fair. And had they been validated or had they been fair, it really began to reveal ideas of discrimination, ideas of racism that even my courses, though I was knowledgeable about their presence, hadn't truly revealed the depths of. I feel that these depths are well explained by Helms's white racial identity development as cited in Johnson and Williams. All of the phases listed, contact, disintegration, reintegration, pseudo-independence, immersion, and autonomy. I feel I've experienced all but autonomy, and I will explain a bit more, but the first 2, 3, 4 stages I felt I moved through prior to coming to Messiah, especially 1 through 3. I felt that as a college student and even as a child I experienced some of these ideas, and fluidly I would go back and forth and move forward, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But as a result of my coursework at Messiah, and particularly as a result of my field experiences, I feel I've currently landed in the immersion and immersion phase. And I feel like this really defines and explains how these experiences have impacted my self-awareness and self-reflectiveness regarding discrimination, privilege, and racism. I feel like I am now asking myself the question, what it means to be white. What it means to benefit from white privilege. Previously, I would identify that there was white privilege, or I would deny that I experienced anything related to that, or that I had ever benefited from such horrible things. And now I'm willing to admit that those are real things, and that I truly do benefit from them, and that my clients may benefit from them should they be white, but may also be victims of white privilege and victims of discrimination as minorities and as different cultures. I'm willing to confront the biases I had historically identified. I'm now willing to challenge them and consider how they're impacting treatment, how they're impacting me and my view of the client, how maybe generalized biases that seem to be held across the board in the white community are impacting my clients from outside of the counseling office. I'm willing to become more activistic, and I will speak on that in the next section, but I'm now willing to begin to consider how I can do something to make a difference, how, even if it's simply within the counseling office, I can begin to change these patterns. I can begin to do something that matters regarding racism, discrimination, and white privilege, as I see the effects that it has on me, and I see the effects that it has on my clients. And I feel that this is summed up in Statement 5, Experiential and Effective Understanding. This statement, I feel, is very summative of what I've experienced. It summarizes my journey through this identity development that I've experienced in my practicum, internships, in my courses, in my time with my clients, that I have begun to gain increased understanding about what they've experienced, about what I experienced, about their knowledge, about my knowledge, about how they feel, and about how I feel. And it is this new opened the doors to becoming a better counselor, to becoming a better empathetic listener, to becoming a better Christian, and to becoming someone who doesn't just have knowledge of something but is willing to do something. The second question presented was, based on your field experiences and coursework training, what is your plan to address the aforementioned issues when you start working as a clinical mental health counselor? In order to effectively answer this question, I feel that we have to go back to the multicultural counseling competencies. When implementing these competencies, I believe that we can begin to actually see change happen in our clients and in our communities and in ourselves. So the three big areas of focus within the competencies are awareness, knowledge, and skill. As I've moved through the courses, as I moved through my practicums and my internships, my field experiences as a whole, I believe I've grown in all three areas. However, one of my biggest areas of growth has been awareness. I've become more aware from very little to quite significantly aware of the different areas that are impacting me, are impacting my clients, and that we're impacting one another. Underneath of all of these three core areas, however, must lie humility. That's the bottom line. Bollinger and Hill define it as the ability to appraise oneself accurately, having an orientation towards others, having interpersonal receptivity, being able to regulate one's emotion, and appreciation of the value in things. And I feel like if I can begin to adopt this humility, in regards to awareness, in regards to knowledge, and in regards to skill, all surrounding multicultural awareness, all surrounding racism, discrimination, and privilege, then I will begin to truly see action and change take place in my counseling sessions and hopefully some inside of my community. In order to begin to address these issues when I begin working as a mental health counselor, as I previously stated, I believe that all three areas need to be addressed. However, I also explained that I've improved in all three areas, particularly in awareness. So in order to move forward, I feel that I must really focus on gaining increased knowledge about not only the effects of racism, privilege, and discrimination, but simply the overall experiences of different minority and marginalized cultures. Again, I must approach this with humility. I must consider my experiences, my growth, the questions of what I think about each client, what I'm assuming about each client, and begin to dive into the content, begin to explore the content with the client, and begin to dive into the content independently. In regards to skill, this is the time to take action. And I believe that this focuses on both interventions within the sessions and community and overall advocacy for the client and just for the field in general. This means that within the session, I take time to address opportunities surrounding culture. I take these opportunities as they come. I feel they must be natural. I feel they must be appropriate. I never want to sideline the session. However, I believe that this competency comes with a confidence that I am able to address these kinds of issues that may be sensitive in session. That means that I don't assume competence. If I'm willing to work collaboratively with a respectful openness to the client, then I must work together with them. I also feel that this focus on individual level change means discussing how internalized oppression has benefited them or hindered them, how externalized oppression from the community, from legislation, from family and friends has helped or hindered them, what policies look like and how that affects their everyday life, what different opportunities are available for them in support and in knowledge and resources. And what kind of connections can they make with everyday legislation in order to help affect change? And if I'm asking clients that myself, then that's where I move into advocacy. I feel that if I'm asking my client to explore those ideas independently and in session together, then I must explore those ideas myself. I must consider how I'm going to be involved in the community, how I'm going to be aware of legislation. I cannot direct a client to legislation or policy or social systems if I'm not aware of them. And that jumps back to knowledge. Again, I feel that these stages and these components are very fluid and they're all inextricably linked. And I think that that's key. That we're moving from an individual level of change and advocacy and intervention, but also into community level of change, advocacy, and intervention. And myself as the counselor, I'm responsible for helping the client move that way, but more than that, I'm responsible for moving that direction. In summary of my responses to the two questions, I believe that awareness and knowledge of multicultural competencies and issues and social justice concerns must increase on my part, but they also must lead to increased action. While I am currently exploring the different ideas and the knowledge and the effects of my biases and willing to confront them, I must also be willing to do something about them. And that is where I feel I must move forward into as I reach graduation, as I continue to work with clients, and as I move towards becoming a mental health counselor. In order to do this, humility is key.
As I grow in increased awareness and knowledge and hopefully action, I must understand that I am deeply impacted and that I have much to learn.
And this is really, I felt, well summed up by some of the contributors to the multicultural competencies who stated that their goal is for counselors to understand that they are being and becoming, and that I will never ever reach ultimate capacity, and that my entire career is a time of growing and learning, but ultimately I must do something about the things that I grow in and learn about in order to help affect change on an individual and a social level.